For years, Expedition Bigfoot has searched the most remote corners of America for proof of the impossible. But during one mission deep in the Oregon wilderness, ex-Marine tracker Russell Acord saw something that made him question everything he thought he knew. What started as a standard field operation turned into a tactical nightmare. Heat signatures moving in perfect formation, technology failing, and data that mysteriously vanished before anyone could review it. Now, Russell is finally speaking out. What he found in those woods wasn't human, and what happened after the cameras stopped rolling will change how you see the entire series. Make sure you're subscribed, because this is the footage they tried to erase. When Expedition Bigfoot launched its Oregon operation, no one expected it to become the most secretive mission in the show's history. The team was well prepared. Advanced drones, high-resolution thermal scopes, motion-triggered cameras, and a precise search grid mapped by military-grade GPS. At the center of it all was Russell Acord, a former Marine turned survival expert, responsible for the team's tactical safety. For him, it was supposed to be just another hunt. Gather evidence, record data, analyze movement patterns. But from the moment they arrived in the Cascades, things didn't feel right. The forest was unnervingly silent. Even the local wildlife seemed to have vanished. Experienced trackers know that silence means something bigger is out there, predator or otherwise. The first 3 nights were uneventful, but on the 4th, everything changed. At approximately 2:03 a.m., while reviewing thermal footage from a drone sweep, the team spotted movement. Not a single creature, but 5. Their heat signatures glowed red against the black valley below, moving in what appeared to be a V-shaped pattern, like soldiers advancing through fog. Russell initially dismissed it as a group of hikers or maybe elk, but the thermal readouts showed each figure standing well over 7 feet tall, and their strides measured nearly 4 feet in length. More alarming, they were moving uphill, fast, through terrain that would take an experienced hiker hours to climb. They were synchronized, Russell said later. That's not how animals move. That's training. The team watched in silence as the figures stopped suddenly, all 5 turning toward the drone. One raised what looked like an arm. Then, the feed froze. The screen went black, followed by a burst of static. Within seconds, every monitor and sensor in the base camp went dead. Power, signal, everything gone. Russell's instincts kicked in. This wasn't a coincidence. You don't lose power across every system at once unless something wants you blind, he said. He ordered the crew to secure the equipment and check the perimeter. But as they stepped out into the night, the air was thick with the sound of slow, deliberate movement coming from the trees. The hunt had just turned, and for the first time, Russell realized they might not be the ones doing the tracking anymore. Russell led his team down the slope into the valley, their flashlights slicing through thick Oregon fog. The night was dead quiet. No birds, no crickets, not even the wind through the firs. "This isn't right," he whispered into his radio. Every instinct from his military training screamed that they were being watched. They were following the coordinates, where the 5 heat signatures had vanished from the drone feed just minutes earlier. Halfway down, the air shifted. Their headsets erupted with static so loud it hurt. Then came a deep, resonant sound from the ridge ahead. A heavy knock, like a tree being struck by another. A few seconds later, another knock replied from the opposite side of the valley. It wasn't random. It was rhythm, communication. Russell signaled the team to stop, hand raised. "Lights out," he mouthed. The forest swallowed them whole. Through his night vision, he caught glimpses of movement. Huge, upright figures slipping between the trees, pacing them on both sides. "They're flanking," he thought. He'd seen it before, overseas, when enemy patrols tried to box soldiers in. But this was no human tactic he could explain. One of the crew whispered that something had just moved past their thermal lens. Another said he could feel the ground vibrate beneath his boots. Then came the rock. It whistled through the dark and crashed into the dirt behind Russell, heavy enough to break bone if it had hit. Not a warning shot, a range test. He raised his scope and froze. For half a second, a massive figure stood just 40 yards away. Its heat signature was pulsing, alive, and it was staring directly at them. Before he could call it in, Every device shut off at once. Cameras, radios, thermal sensors, dead. No sound but their breathing and the thudding of something circling them in the dark. Russell whispered, "We're compromised. Move out, now." By the time they climbed back to camp, the forest had gone silent again, but the damage was done. Every thermal file, every second of footage from that night was gone. It was as if someone, or something, had erased the entire event from existence. Back at base camp, Russell and the crew tore through their equipment in disbelief. Every system that had gone dark was suddenly working again, perfectly. But when they opened the drives, all of the data from the night before, gone. The thermal scans, the drone telemetry, even the audio recordings, all wiped clean between 1:57 and 2:19 a.m. The files didn't show signs of corruption. They showed manual deletion. "That's not a malfunction," Russell said flatly. "That's human interference." Bryce Johnson, the producer, tried to stay calm, chalking it up to a glitch. But Russell had spent too many years in the military to buy that explanation. He knew what a digital wipe looked like: deliberate, precise, intentional. When they checked the backup drive, it too was blank. The timestamps had been rewritten, as if someone had replaced the data with dummy files. "Someone cleaned it," he muttered. "Someone with access." Later that morning, when the team gathered for breakfast, their base tech reported something strange. The system's internal clock had reset to 2 hours before the encounter. "That shouldn't have been possible without a full reboot. We didn't just lose footage," the tech said. "It's like time itself jumped backward." Russell's frustration turned to suspicion. Who would want to erase the recordings? And why? He demanded access to Discovery's central data server to cross-check the upload logs, but within hours, the system was locked. The field tech, who usually managed their archives, refused to answer calls. When Russell finally reached him, the man's voice was shaking. "You didn't see what we saw," he whispered, then hung up. That afternoon, Discovery headquarters sent an encrypted message to the field team. "Cease discussion of Oregon data pending corporate review. All files are under temporary hold." Russell's gut twisted. This wasn't corporate policy. It was containment. Someone, somewhere, didn't want those recordings seen again. "They told us we were searching for evidence," he said later. "But the second we found it, they made sure it disappeared." It was the first time he realized the biggest secret in Expedition Bigfoot history might not have been buried by chance. It might have been erased on purpose. Determined to uncover the truth, Russell decided to go back, alone. A few weeks after the incident, he returned to Oregon without the production crew. Without cameras, without backup. He packed only essential: a thermal monocular, a satellite phone, a compass, and his old marine instincts. The coordinates from the deleted footage were burned into his mind. "If they're gonna erase the evidence," he said, "then I'll find something they can't delete." The forest felt different this time. It wasn't just silent, it was aware. As he hiked toward the valley where the drone had crashed, he noticed subtle changes. Trees bent in the same direction, rocks stacked in unnatural patterns, branches twisted high above his reach. It was as if something had been marking the territory after they left. At dusk, he found it, the drone wreckage half buried under wet leaves near a creek bed. The camera housing was cracked, but the main body was intact. When he opened the casing, the memory card slot was empty. No debris, no signs of weather damage. Someone had removed it. "That wasn't an animal," Russell said later. "That was cleanup." But the real discovery was a few feet away. Pressed into the mud was a single footprint, roughly 16 inches long, 5 inches wide, with visible toe impressions. The step depth indicated a weight well over 600 pounds. "That's not human," he muttered, photographing the print from multiple angles. He emailed the images to a forensic analyst he trusted from his military days. The response came hours later. Whatever made that track was upright and bipedal. Too heavy for a man, too symmetrical for machinery. As night fell, Russell made camp near the ridge. Around 3 a.m., he was jolted awake by 3 loud knocks echoing through the valley. He froze, heart pounding, before responding with 2. A pause, then 3 more answered back. It wasn't random, it was a pattern. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just an animal leaving tracks, it was communicating. And for the first time in his life, Russell Acord, the soldier, the skeptic, the tracker, felt what it meant to be hunted. Russell's discovery sent shockwaves through the Expedition Bigfoot camp once he returned. He showed the crew his photos of the footprint and described the eerie knocks that had echoed through the night. But instead of excitement, he was met with silence. "Don't say a word about this," one of the producers told him. Corporate wants everything from Oregon off the record. It didn't make sense. This was exactly the kind of evidence the show was built on. Yet, behind the scenes, it felt like everyone had suddenly been ordered to stand down. A week later, an anonymous email appeared in Russell's inbox. The subject line read, "Oregon, Containment Notice." Attached was a single-page memo labeled Confidential, Discovery Legal Division. It mentioned unauthorized data access, field irregularities, and a final phrase that chilled him: third-party review initiated. That meant someone outside the production, a group he didn't recognize, had taken control of their recordings. "We were no longer in charge of our own evidence," he said later. Then came the leak. A former production assistant anonymously posted screenshots of internal messages between executives. One line stood out: "Oregon footage classified as non-broadcastable due to anomalous imagery." Within hours, the leak was scrubbed, accounts deleted, IPs traced. The network denied everything, but the damage was done. It proved the footage existed and that someone had deliberately buried it. Russell, furious, went public in a live stream watched by only a few thousand fans. "They erased the truth," he said, "but they can't erase what we saw." He described the 5 heat signatures, the lost data, the erased logs, and the feeling that they had stumbled into something organized. "Whatever's out there," he warned, "it's not running from us. It's watching us." After the stream, Russell's emails began bouncing back. His phone glitched. One morning, he woke to find tire tracks across his rural driveway, deep, wide, and unfamiliar. That's when he realized the cover-up wasn't just digital anymore. It had become personal. In the weeks that followed, Russell began to notice things that made his skin crawl. Emails were disappearing from his inbox, unread. Calls from other team members dropped after a single ring. He'd catch glimpses of unfamiliar vehicles idling on the gravel road outside his Montana home. Same make, same color, always with tinted windows. "At first I thought it was paranoia," he said later. "Then I started seeing the same SUV in different states." One night, his phone buzzed with a restricted text message. It contained a single sentence: "Stop asking about Oregon." No number, no signature. The next morning, his laptop refused to boot, its hard drive wiped clean. Russell called the field tech who had originally handled the expedition's data. The man sounded terrified. "They took everything," he said. "Don't contact me again." Hours later, his number was disconnected. Russell was trained to notice patterns, and what he was seeing looked exactly like a counterintelligence operation. "This wasn't random trolling or fans messing with me," he explained. "This was surveillance. This was structured." Soon after, an anonymous email arrived in a throwaway account he'd created years earlier for fieldwork. The subject line simply read, "You were never supposed to record that valley." Attached was a grainy still image showing the 5 glowing figures from the night of the incident, mid-stride in the forest clearing. But there was something even stranger in the metadata. The image hadn't come from their drone. The thermal resolution was far higher, military grade. Russell brought the file to Bryce Johnson, who immediately recognized it wasn't from any equipment they'd used. "That's not our tech," Bryce said. "That's classified-level imaging," which left only one conclusion. Another group had been in the same area, recording the same heat signatures at the same time, and they hadn't wanted the public to know. That was when it clicked for Russell. The Oregon mission hadn't just stumbled onto a mystery of nature. They had walked straight into someone else's operation. "We weren't alone in those woods," he said quietly. "We were in their airspace, and whatever they were tracking wasn't supposed to be found." Determined to find answers, Russell filed multiple FOIA requests seeking information about any government or military operations near Mount Hood during the week of the Expedition Bigfoot shoot. Weeks passed with no response, until, finally, a letter arrived. Every single request had been denied, with the same vague phrase, "No records found." But Russell wasn't convinced. "You don't get no records when aircraft are spotted on radar," he said. "That means there are records. They're just not for me." Locals from nearby towns began coming forward with unsettling stories. Hikers reported seeing black black helicopters without markings flying low over the tree line. Hunters spoke of hearing engines deep in no-access zones long after midnight. One retired park ranger who refused to go on camera told Russell, "There's a part of those woods that isn't on any map. You cross that boundary, you'll meet people who don't wear badges." When Russell pushed the network for support, Discovery's PR department issued a generic statement. No classified operations intersected with the production of Expedition Bigfoot. But the more he pressed, the more doors closed. Crew members stopped returning his call. Emails were deleted from the show's shared server. Even his old friends in law enforcement warned him to drop it. "You're digging into something that doesn't want to be dug up," one said. Despite the silence, fragments of truth began surfacing. An anonymous user on a cryptid research forum posted coordinates matching Russell's Lost Valley. The user claimed it was part of an experimental tracking grid used by defense contractors to monitor large, heat-producing life forms. The post was deleted within hours, but not before screenshots spread across Reddit and Bigfoot forums. Russell's theory grew darker. The 5 heat signatures weren't just unknown creatures, they were being monitored by someone else, maybe even contained. "Whatever's in those woods," he said, "somebody already knew. And the night we showed up with cameras, we weren't discovering it, we were interrupting it." From that point on, Russell wasn't hunting Bigfoot anymore. He was hunting the truth, and it was starting to look like the truth might be classified. Months passed before Russell heard anything new about the Oregon mission. Then, one night, he got an encrypted email from an unlisted address. No message body, just an attachment labeled "Recovered Segment." When he opened it, the screen flickered and loaded a short, corrupted thermal clip. 3 glowing figures moved through fog, side by side, in perfect unison. Behind them, a 4th heat signature trailed at a distance, smaller, faster, almost like it was watching them. Russell immediately called an old contact, a researcher from Oregon State University who had analyzed wilderness footage before. She ran the file through forensic software and confirmed it. The data wasn't fabricated. The movement patterns were real, and the temperature signatures matched living, breathing organisms, each over 600 pounds, radiating heat far above normal mammalian levels. "They weren't wandering," she told him. "They were patrolling." For Russell, that word changed everything. Patrolling. These weren't aimless creatures hiding from people. They were organized, coordinated, intelligent. "That's what the government's been afraid of," he said. "It's not just about proving they exist. It's about admitting they operate like us." He posted a still frame from the footage online. 5 heat signatures, one turning toward the camera. Within hours, the image went viral, then vanished. His accounts were suspended, his posts flagged for policy violations. Within 24 hours, his YouTube interview about the clip was taken down. Still, the damage was done. The footage circulated through private forums, underground servers, and encrypted threads, sparking a new wave of investigation. For believers, it was the closest thing to proof yet. For skeptics, it was another conspiracy theory. But for Russell Acord, the man who shot it, it was confirmation that the night in Oregon wasn't an accident. It was an encounter with something bigger, something being tracked, studied, and contained long before Expedition Bigfoot ever showed up with cameras. Today, Russell Acord rarely talks about Expedition Bigfoot. He's distanced himself from public interviews, focusing instead on quiet appearances at cryptid conventions and veteran retreats. But those who've spoken to him privately say he's not the same man who went into those Oregon woods. He's calmer, but colder, more watchful. He doesn't go camping anymore, one friend said, not without a firearm and a thermal scope. When asked directly if he still believes in Bigfoot, Russell never gives a straight answer. "Belief isn't the issue," he says. "It's what you do when you find out belief was never the problem." His tone always drops when he mentions the Oregon Valley. "We weren't the first ones out there, and we won't be the last." Some think he's hinting at a government cover-up, others at something darker, an organized species capable of eluding modern detection, protected or studied in silence. The pattern of secrecy fits. Since 2019, reports of restricted access zones have increased across parts of Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. Former park workers quietly admit unofficial patrols have been spotted guarding certain areas at night. None of it is confirmed, but it all traces back to the coordinates from the deleted footage. In a rare podcast appearance, Russell left listeners with a statement that silenced the room. "People think we were chasing monsters, but monsters don't move in formation. Soldiers do." Then, after a long pause, he added something that fans still replay online. "If you ever see 5 of them together, don't film it, don't look back, just leave, because by the time you see them, they've already seen you." And that was it. No dramatic music, no outro, just the voice of a man who'd gone into the wilderness searching for proof of the unknown, and found something that didn't want to be found.